Welcome back to our discussion on House of the Dragon. Today we are talking about episode 7. What did you think of this epic episode?
This was the dragon episode. It really was about the dragons, and I loved every second, apart from Alison bit. But other than that, I was just hooked. I was like, yes, especially the end.
Oh my gosh, I know. It was so good. It ended
It
on
was
such a
so
high
good.
note.
Such a high note. I mean, Vermithor just kind of being like, bitch, no, burning shit. But also, like, before that, Rhaenyra calling Vermithor before and kind of like touching him and being like strong willed and all of this, and everybody else is shitting themselves, right? And obviously, you get a close up on Hugh and all of that. And then he just kind of decides to like burn and kill everybody. People are falling down into the drag. It was just amazing. I loved it.
Yeah.
I love Vermithor.
So many dragons in this episode too, because we even started the episode with dragons. I love so much of it, and I really enjoyed it. Like whenever I was watching the episode, like I was enjoying every second of it. But like I'm gonna say, sitting back and thinking about it some more, I feel like I do have some criticisms, so they mostly revolve around Allison.
Yeah,
Of
I just
just
kind of feel like they didn't really know what they were doing with her storyline.
yeah,
They just kind of
I feel like, because there were some episodes in, like, I think I said this previously, there were some episodes in Game of Thrones that did not visit every character or every storyline
yeah.
during the episode. So it'd be like mostly focused on like maybe a couple storylines, but not every single
Yeah.
one. And I feel like House of the Dragon has been focusing on like every storyline, every episode. And I feel like they did the
Yeah.
same thing with this. And I'm like, we could have skipped some of the storylines.
Yeah, but also they very made it like Alison against Rhaenyra.
Hmm.
So she became a really pivotal character. And then when obviously Aemon became king and all of that happened, she was like, oh, well, what do I do now? I'm like shunted out of power. I've got nothing. So it's kind of just felt like they didn't really know what to do with her necessarily and stuff like that. So, uh, I will say I have read up to where I think the season's going to end in
Oh,
Fire and Blood.
uh-huh.
So I have an inkling of what's possibly going to happen. I'm not going to say too much on it. I'm going to say nothing on it because it's spoilers. But I've got a feeling I know what's going to happen, which is why I quite liked Damon in this episode.
Hmm.
So the direction they went with him in the show, do not like at all. In the books, far better, prefer it, but they probably want some conflict. But I do like how him and Oscar Tully, love him,
Oh my
uh,
gosh, yes.
kind of came together and he managed to get the River Lords. Like it feels like this was Damon's episode of like coming back into his own. I did hear somebody call it Alice's therapy lessons and like his dream sequences. It's
Oh my
kind of stuck
goodness.
now. It's kind of
Oh my
stuck.
goodness.
Um, but it does feel like he's coming back into his own a bit more. And he spoke with Oscar Tully. They got the River Lords. He killed the Bracken for what he did. So I'm hoping from like next episode, it's gonna be really strong, and everything's gonna happen.
Yeah. I think the demon, and I've been enjoying demons like dream sequences throughout the show, and I think this was one of the stronger Damon episodes for sure, and we're definitely actually moving forward with Damon's plotline now. I did think in some ways and I feel like even in the interactions with the River Lords and with young Lord Tully and all of that, Damon's realizing what it means to lead, and he's not always going to have the respect because, like, the Lord Tully guy played Damon because he was like, he purposely called him Prince, like you. And then Damon was like, it's King or whatever. And Damon realizing like he doesn't necessarily have their respect, even if they are deciding to fight for him. And then right after that, we get like another dream sequence, which I feel like is just reinforcing what was in the previous scene. So I was kind of feeling like, wasn't entirely necessary because it was just um, Viserys being like, I didn't always want the crown. Are you sure you actually want it? I feel like we could have gotten that from the previous scene without actually doing another
Yeah.
Daemon dream sequence this time.
Yeah. Yeah, I do see a point. I do feel like they've kind of overdone it in this sense. Like, it's not quite it's coming to a head, but it hasn't quite come to a head yet. So I'm a bit like, well, what's really, because we didn't even see Alice in this episode at all.
Hmm.
So, you know, and now he's got what he wanted. Although I did like the Viserys and Daemon scene, but yeah, when you compare it with the other stuff, it's kind of just like hammering the nail over the head even more. So,
Yeah. Well,
um,
and like I said, I've enjoyed the previous Daemon dream sequences. So like I did like this one, but at the same time, like if you just like step back and look at it, we've had like dream sequences how many times? Like how many times are we going over the same thing? Like we could have cut some things.
yeah, yeah, no, I do agree with that. But I mean, he has the River Lords now, which is what he wanted. So I'm not going to say any more on that because I know what happens with because of the book. As if they're sticking to it, they might
Yeah.
completely change it. They might, but who knows? But loved. Okay, Adam Valerian, who's got
Oh yeah.
the
Mhm.
dragon
Mhm.
rider. Because there's Adam and Alan's the other one.
Yeah.
And I love the scene with those two together, like Corlys walking in, and Corlys also being like, trust the Queen as well, whenever we did up in arms, and the Queen came back with the Dragon Rider and was like, yeah. Um, and yeah, I find him really compelling.
Okay, you cut out there for a second.
Oh, did I? Oh,
Yeah.
whoops. My internet is not great. I'm not gonna lie. Um, but I was just saying how much I love Corlys Valerian.
Mhm.
He's not done a lot, and yet he's one of my favorites.
I think he's a character that just like has presence in the scenes that he's in. Like you really feel his presence, and I think that, helps those characters stand out even if they haven't like really done a whole lot yet.
Yeah, especially like the scene with him and his sons as well. I
Mhm.
thought, that was definitely good. But I mean, the main takeaway was obviously getting the small folk to come to Dragonstone. Jace getting pissed off, understandably. Um, but also that's his own demons to fight. I was like, subconsciously, you don't believe you're a true Targaryen. You're relying on the dragon for that. So there's all sorts of stuff going on with him. But it was mainly just calling people over and getting a dragon.
I mean, I think Jace has a point because, they're fighting a war over who gets the throne after Viserys dies. And if Rhaenyra is to get the throne, people have already called into question Jace's legitimacy while Rhaenyra is still alive. So even if Rhaenyra names Jace as her heir, the same thing could happen again because Viserys named Rhaenyra as his heir, and they're going to war over it. So I think in some ways he has a point. I mean, I do agree that like he probably has his own demons to fight, and he needs to work through that on his own. But at the same time, like, I don't think he was wrong for saying, hey, wait a minute, if bastards can ride dragons, then that doesn't make me any better than them.
Yeah, but in their world beliefs, they believe bastards don't have any honor and stuff like that. So there's all of that sort of playing on as well. I do stand by Rhaenyra's decision though to do it because I'm like, you're kind of on the back. Who else are you gonna do? Dragons choose who they choose.
Yeah.
Like Sea Smoke chose Adam Valerian and chased him and played with him. Like he didn't want it, and all of a sudden, oh okay, he's got a dragon.
Yeah.
So there is that kind of thing, and when you are fighting a war, sometimes you just have to kind of bend a few rules a little bit um, to get what you want at the end, which kind of showed when they lured Vhagar out and Aemond. which
Mhm.
is at first you come across like, is this you losing control of your dragon? But actually, I think it was probably a stunt by Rhaenyra, because when Vega flies over to Dragonstone, he Aemon sees the other dragons and decides to go nope, because Vermithor is big,
Mhm.
but not as big as Vega, but also younger than Vega. Because Vermithor, see, this is what I like about the symbolism. Hugh, who took Vermithor, is the son of Sarah Targaryen, who was one of Jaehaerys's children, but he disowned her because she was so disobedient. So she ran away and became a whore.
Mhm.
So that's how that. So that's a direct descendant from the rule. Like, well, they're all from rule line probably, but yeah, from actual Jaehaerys, King Jaehaerys. So King Jaehaerys had Vermithor as his dragon. So I thought that was quite sweet in the symbolism.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've heard that because I don't know, they didn't really, I mean, they talked about it in the episode a little bit, but I didn't know, like, quite who she was until, like, I
You
was
wouldn't,
seeing
yeah.
yeah, I
They
was seeing people comment on that, like, people watching the
yeah.
show who have read the books.
Yeah, you'd know more from reading the books.
Mhm.
But it does, it sort of, it gets across enough of, I'm a cousin of Daemon and Viserys,
Mhm.
so like a first cousin. So he's definitely got a strong claim. Um, but it was quite nice. It took me a while to actually realize. It took me to this episode to realize that Hugh and Olaf were two different people. Don't ask me why they just bled into the same, because we saw Olaf first. I just assumed we were back to him the whole time, and it wasn't. I was like, oh wait, no, it's different. It's
I
different.
think
Um,
the first couple episodes they were in, I thought they were same people, but then I was starting to, differentiate them.
yeah,
I mean, and
that
this
was
is where,
totally on
like,
me.
I understand why we were following those characters because, like, I mean, at the same time, it's like, obviously, these characters are important in the future.
Yeah.
I do feel like, I'm not sure if they built the characters up well enough, like, leading up to this, but, like, I'm not sure how they could have done it better, I guess. But it was like whenever they're going, "Oh, who's gonna claim the dragons?" It's super obvious who in this crowd is going to have the
Oh
dragons, and the camera was even, like,
yes,
super obvious about it too, because it was just focusing on both of those characters.
yes, but if they did it differently, it would have felt cheated, because, like, yeah, we know they're going to get a dragon. It's like, oh, you've just got a dragon. Whereas this case, especially with Vermithor, right? How he's burning shit. People are running. Rhaenyra is standing at the top, like, really still believing it is going to work. It's got to work. People are dying, crawling away. And then you have Hugh again. I love the fact, he lost his daughter. He's saving this girl, runs forward. And it just felt like he earned it,
Mhm,
even though we knew he was going to become a dragon rider. We knew they both
mhm.
were. Although it is Game of Thrones, they could have built them up and still ripped them away. I still think it wouldn't have worked as well. I
Yeah.
think we would have felt like, well, why are we following these characters for that short of a time? If it was like they will have more of a play and then they did it would work a bit better. But you know, the fact that he again ran forward, prepared to die to save this stranger he didn't even know, this
Mhm.
girl, and Vermithor went, yeah, I'll choose you.
Yeah.
I thought that was how that was done. Like, I really liked how that was handled, because
Yeah.
it felt like, okay, he's earned that right, he's earned it. And then you get Silverwing, he was just like, oh, I like you, Ulf, as he steps on a clutch of dragon eggs, which I've
Yeah.
heard is going to become important. I don't really know why. Um, but obviously we do realize the dragons do end up, because Game of Thrones there's no dragons, so something happens. So I
Mhm.
don't know how it's going to happen, but I suspect it's going to be around that. But everything was just fire and dragons, and I loved it.
Yeah. I loved the way Rhaenyra acted in this episode,
Oh
and
yes,
particularly, like, whenever she is looking down on them and the dragon is just, like, burning and eating everyone, and she and then particularly whenever the dragon chooses Hugh, it goes back to her and, like, the look on her face is more like a triumph, like, she doesn't really care about the bastards. Yeah, she said, "Oh, I'm gonna create an army of bastards," but she doesn't care how many of them die in her way to becoming queen, and I don't know, I felt like
I'd,
we were seeing
I'd,
that.
yeah, I'd put it more the case of she cares about the small folk, but she's also at a point where she's like, I've got to make a decision on whether or not to follow through with this and have more dragon power to take on Vhagar to then take King's Landing. Because it is war, so you can still care for all these people, but realizing you have to make the bad decisions, and this is possibly one of them. It probably, looking from people on the outside of Rhaenyra, probably were like, well, why would you do that? So many people died. Like, you saw the dragon tamers, dragon keepers, sorry, you know, storm out on Rhaenyra, which is a big kind of sign. Everybody's like, well, they're leaving. That's not good. Everybody was against her. It's like, it's not going to work. You're just going to kill a load of people, which did happen. But she was so grounded in her belief that even when they were like, we've got to go because the dragon, is burning everybody, she was like, no, I still believe it's going to work. And it did pay off, but it was at a high price.
Mhm. I'm not sure if we've gotten from her that she actually cares about the small folk. I think she's willing to care about them as far as it advances her cause.
To me, I believe there was a scene between Rhaenys and her, or I don't know, I could have dreamed it, I don't fucking know. It kind of alluded to the side of kind of like, well, Aegon isn't going to be a good king to the small folk. Aemond doesn't give a two shits about them at all. So Rhaenyra is the better one for the people and to rule because, she knows when to push and when to sort of hold herself back a little bit. And she does have more of a caring heart than I say the two brothers do.
I
But
think she would be a better queen than either of the 2 brothers. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree with that. Like, I think she cares more than they do.
yeah. Again, it's a difficult one because looking at it, to be a ruler, you can't care too much because you can't please everybody. But you also can't have a heart of stone.
Mhm.
So it's a fine line. And also when you're at war, there's a lot of things, a lot of decisions you've got to make. Like you're even sending your own people, your own bannermen, to fight and possibly die for you.
Yeah.
So there's all of that, you have to have a little bit of kind of like metal behind you and kind of be like, okay, I am going to do this. Like she's not Damon,
Mhm.
because she has to know what Damon's like. So she's not Damon, but there are moments when you're like, she can be this ruthless, but she's always has a line to cross. Like when Damon with the whole blood and cheese, you know, she was like, "You ordered that. That I don't
Yeah.
agree with that." So
Yeah.
she has a line to cross, but at the same time, she's also like, "I need my throne. I need dragons. This is how we get dragons because we tried it with a knight, didn't work. Okay, let's." And then obviously, Bastard came to Sneeze Smoke, so she's like, "Well, let's try it." Because dragons don't necessarily go from nobility, as we found out. They go from, I don't know, some kind of thing, metal and having blood. Because again, this is what, because Adam Valerians are from Valeria. I've got a feeling I got the last name wrong then. But they're descended from Valeria, same as the Targaryens.
Mhm.
But the Targaryens obviously ruled Valeria, but they didn't. So they had the dragons. So it kind of says, was there something in Valeria, like in that kind of blood, that kind of does it with dragons? But they are keeping to the mechanics of the book and like Game of Thrones. So it usually is always Targaryens who bond dragons. We don't really know why, but that's kind of the magic system George R. R. Martin set up. So I'm liking the keeping with that
Yeah.
rather than just kind of going anybody can have a dragon.
Yeah.
Even though that'd be kind of fun to explore, but
I'm pretty sure it was in George R. R. Martin's blog recently, but he said something recently about, like, we will find out more about how dragon bonds work in the next book if it comes out.
Yes. Well, if he's at Worldcon, I'm going to ask him.
He's
One
supposed to
day.
he's supposed to be there.
He's supposed to be there, but he wasn't allowed to do any panels and stuff because of everything with the whole Worldcon committee. So they said he can still come. Whether he still will is we don't know. He's we might have to recheck his blog, but last I looked, he
Yeah.
did say he was going. So he could just go as like a spectator and just people you bump into him. So I'll be carrying my books in my bag at all times from the off chance I will see George.
There you go.
And then I'll be like, George, or I'll probably ask him the question. I'll be like, look, can you just tell me like what's the mechanics of it? And yeah, but anyway, I'll probably get so many questions from so many people about.
I was gonna say he's probably
Oh,
like everyone's probably gonna be asking him.
I know it's why I feel like if I ask a specific question, maybe it won't be the one person who will ask. Winter.
There you go.
Although I am hoping it's going to come
Yeah.
some point soon, but who knows? I'll be
Yeah.
happy either way. To be fair, I'd love to have winter, but I like the books anyway, so I just reread them as they are, even if I know how the last book ends on a really big cliffhanger.
I think
So,
it's worth getting into the story, even if you don't even if we're not gonna have a conclusion. I'm kind of like a journey over
yeah.
conclusion person anyway.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
So am I. I reread them all the time. I think I'm rereading them with a friend this year. She's going to do her first read through, and I was like, "Ah, read with you."
nice.
You know,
Nice.
I got her to read so many books. She's on Sun Eater because of me. She's read One of the Many because of me. She's reading Stormlight because of her boyfriend. And I was like, and then she tried Fire and Blood, and I was like, you need to read Game of Thrones first. It's not. You
Yeah.
don't read Fire and Blood without reading Game of. That's gonna go. I just love the word. Nothing tops Game of Thrones. Nothing's been written like Game of Thrones. The only thing that comes close, Grace of Kings.
I need to read that one.
You do need
After
to
I
read that one.
read the entire Song of Ice and Fire, after I
entire
read all of those
entire
books.
Game of Thrones, then delve into Grace of
Yes.
Kings.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. It's good. I've only read book one still, but it's really good. Loved it. Anyway, that was that little tangent about books.
Do we want to go ahead and talk about Alicent a little bit? And Reyna. Let's talk about both of them.
So, I have a feeling I know what's going to happen with Reyna when I say
Mhm.
it. Because in the books, there's an added character that ends up taming that dragon, the wild dragon. I've got a feeling they're going to cut her out purely because I think there's a variety of reasons. But I think Reyna's going to step into her place. I've got a feeling how that's going
Well,
to go.
and even the previous episode, whenever we saw Reyna and she realizes there's a dragon in the Vale, I said, "Oh, I would love it if Reyna gets to ride that dragon." And particularly since like everyone in Dragonstone is overlooking Reyna whenever they're looking at who can bond with the dragons. Now I understand one of those
Yeah.
dragons did already turn down Reyna, so like maybe don't try
Well,
to bond with that one again.
she tried, and it wouldn't just be one dragon. They just kind of try a few, but it was I think it was almost fatal to her life in a sense. That's why they didn't try her again, which is why she ended up going with Rhaenyra's children to protect them, even though she doesn't have a dragon and she really wants a dragon. So I would like to see it, but I like how they tame the dragon in the book, and I don't know if they're gonna have time to do that in the show. And what will then come of it uh, from that side of it? I've got a suspicion of what will happen, and I can't say anything because it's a big spoiler of what could possibly happen. So we'll have to read that and find out because this I know what's going to happen. It's going to be really sad, but I do hope that is going to happen. That would
Yeah.
be really good for Reyna. Um, and it'll also be good for Rhaenyra on the front because she got another dragon. Yes, it's a wild dragon, which makes me come to the point. See, this is the thing with dragons. I love dragons, and I love how in this show, especially with like Vermithor burning shit, they did not treat dragons like pets. They're
Mhm.
still wild. Like you see with Aemond, he lost control of Vhagar, right?
Mhm.
In season one. He's now has more control of Vhagar, but they are still dragons. So they're still beings with their own thoughts, feelings, that kind of stuff. They will act however they want, which is great. What gets me is there needs to be a distinction between the wild dragon and then the so-called tamed dragons, because they're
Yeah.
used to having riders. It does bug me that always got a saddle on, and I'm like, that is going to rub. I don't care if it scales. That's going into the mechanics of dragon stuff, and I
Mhm.
could literally give a talk on that, but I won't. But it's one of the things I'm like, no, you have to treat a dragon. You have to, stop all this and all of that. And does the saddle fit? All of that kind of stuff going on. But anyway, there definitely needs to be a distinction because the wild dragon's going to act different. Because you've seen horses. Even
Mhm.
when you bring a horse in to be tamed, a wild horse is going to have different. It's going to have different instincts and just act slightly different to what domesticated is. And I really wish they are going to keep that distinction with it, but again, we don't know. We
Yeah.
don't know if it's going to go that far because it's not necessarily about the dragons; it's about the throne. So it could go. I don't know. I'd like it to go into that depth. Me as a dragon lover and an animal enthusiast, but will it? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But
One
I,
of the things I love about the dragons in this series is how wild they feel. And I love all kinds of interpretations of dragons, but like we
yeah,
literally have dragon riders in this series, but they still feel very wild and like
yeah,
kind of, I mean, they still feel a little bit untamed, you know? And
yeah,
I like that feeling because I feel like a lot of series with dragon riders, we end up with like a friendly, intelligent dragon that can talk or stuff
yeah,
like that, which
yeah.
I enjoy that interpretation of dragons too. But like, I like seeing a variety of takes on it.
Well, this is the thing because you look at Aragon. It's a magic that makes them communicate, so they can understand each other, right? Whereas in this, it's a language, Old Valerian, but that doesn't necessarily mean the dragons are going to listen. Because again, you
Mhm.
have people who can't speak Valerian that have managed to, get their dragons, Bond dragon and like Adam managed to get him to Dragonstone. But I think half of that was because he was just like follow the other dragon. And he went, yeah, I'll follow the other dragon. Um, but then you see the fact with Olaf riding Sea Smoke, not Sea Smoke, Silverwing over King's Landing and kind of having the time of his life. Totally get that. But also, like, holy shit, how do I control this dragon? We need to turn around now and try to get it to.
Yeah.
And you see that little bit of kind of like, oh shit, I can't actually control this yet. So there is that, which I find a nice, little thing because yeah, it's the same thing. What I look with horses, you can start a horse, you train them how to listen to your rate stuff like this, but if they don't want to do it, the horse won't. Like point blank will refuse. Is far bigger, far stronger than you. It can just say nah. I'm not going to go
Mhm.
forward, no matter what you do with it. I mean, I don't agree with beating horses at all, but even if you did, it still go no because it's still far. And I get the same impression with dragons. It's kind of I'm doing
Mhm.
it because you're asking me to do it, and I want to do it, not necessarily because and again, if I didn't want to do it, I just it's like with Vega when she hunted Luke and his dragon. Aemon didn't really want that, but
Yeah.
it still happened. So which I do really like how they are portraying those kind of dragons. How they do, because again, it feels like a cheat if you just have, oh, just because magic, they understand to do what I want. And I'm
Mhm.
like, that seems very cheaty. It was all right like 10, 15 years ago, maybe in like early reader career, but now I'm like, I want a bit more.
Yeah.
Also, that could also influence because I do work with horses all the time. So I work with animals, so I can see the differences in animals. And I
Yeah.
work for a horse trainer as well, so that's the one step above just what I usually do. So there is that, but I do like it. I'll be interested to see what is going to happen. I do
I
want,
assume they're gonna teach them like some Valyrian commands.
yeah, they will teach them some Valyrian, to obviously talk to their dragons. Um, but it would be interesting to see how soon they end up putting them at play
Mhm.
because let's say you've just learnt to ride a dragon or a horse or whatever, you're not gonna go. in a command place and, be something of really consequential action, come whatever, in battle early on because you're still a little bit green, especially with controlling a horse like a dragon. So it'd be interesting to see how far they go with their training. We're probably not going to see much of their training. We might just have a time skip of, oh, they know how to fly a dragon now, and
Right.
you just assume some time has gone. Um, but it would be interesting to because if they could maneuver like Renice with Melis like that quickly with that bond, that would make me go a bit like, well, I'd kind of like to see a little bit of at least them struggling a little bit to begin with
Hmm.
and then get into it. But again, you've also got to take on, Dragon's instincts and stuff like that. Vermithor would be amazing in battle. Like, I want to see Vermithor, Syrax, and Caraxes against Vhagar.
Yes. I feel like we're definitely getting, I could be wrong. I feel like we're definitely getting a dragon battle this next episode. I don't know what exactly that will look like though.
I see, I'm a little bit on the fence. So, did you see the promo for the next episode?
I did not.
Do you want to know about it or not?
No.
Okay, that's fine. I won't mention what I was going to mention then. That's fine. Um, I definitely feel like Aemond is a little bit backpedaling and panicking because at the moment all he's got is Vhagar and obviously Daeron's dragon, but Daeron's still really young.
That's true. And Aemon might not want to face multiple dragons.
He won't want to face multiple dragons, but he's definitely going to be like, how can I, fix this? Because they've got more power now. Because he relied so much on Vhagar
Hmm.
for being the biggest dragon. And obviously, when especially when Melis died, he killed Melis. From their point of view, they've got Daemon, but he's all the way over in Harrenhal, so it will take him time to come anywhere. Even
Hmm.
though they can fly quite quickly, it will still take him some time. And then it's Rhaenyra on Dragonstone. They're the two dragons who could actually prove any sort of threat against Vhagar. The other
Yeah.
dragons are too small, far too small to even contemplate going against Vhagar. Like Rhaenyra even said that. I think she said that to Jason in this episode. Like, you can't go against Vhagar. The only one who can is Vermithor and Silverwing and Syrax. So that's all going on. So I feel like Aemon's a little bit scrambling. Or he's going to scramble. He's
Yeah.
going to be like,
That's fair.
what can we do? What can we do? What's going to happen next? So, be interesting to see how far he's going to go. Interesting to see what Alicent is going to do in the next episode. Because I kind of really want her to do like a talking to Aemond, but because we're in this situation because of Aemond. If he hadn't killed Luke, blood and cheese wouldn't have happened, and then we wouldn't have gotten to this point this far ahead. Even though I'm loving that we are here because entertaining, but
Yes.
it wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for Aemond. So
Yeah. I don't know what they're gonna do with Allison because I don't know what they were doing with her this episode. And I feel like
yeah,
previously we had left on, she's losing power in King's Landing. And then, we like zoomed in on her like breathing heavy as, everyone's just like making decisions around her and without her. And I feel like that made the point that she's, not really relevant to like the council or those around her, and she's like losing control. And I feel like in this episode she's just like, okay, fine, so I'm just leaving now. And I'm like, what?
yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe this will like pay off in the next episode because like I'm fine if they try to like set things up and then like have them pay off later. Like I don't necessarily need payoff in the same episode, but this does just kind of leave me
No,
scratching my head of
it
like, where
it
are they
did
going?
it just felt very ambling, very like, what are you doing? And I understand like the symbolism of her in the lake looking at like the bird realizing, oh shit, I'm not free, I love that kind of thing, but it's kind of like, but why at this moment? Why now? What? Why is she going? I understand that she's. I get the impression she's just had enough and just wants to run away, but she obviously won't because there's her kids.
Mhm.
So and there's that kind of playing off. I'm like, and you know, she obviously wants to keep the throne. She doesn't want Rhaenyra to have the throne. So there's all sorts of things going on, and all of that. What got me was Laris.
Mhm.
He's up to something,
Oh, for sure.
especially with Aegon.
Mhm.
But I have a feeling they're showing Aegon like this in this episode to make what happens in the next episode better. I'm not gonna. This is if my suspicions is right. I could be completely wrong, but yeah, this was definitely very much a pure dragon episode of pick a dragon, Vermithor burning people
Mhm.
and gaining dragon riders. So on the episode
Yeah.
mainly, which I enjoyed. I
Oh, I
definitely
did
enjoyed.
too.
Just can't really think of much else to say about about that because it's just
Yeah.
burning stuff. I do
Yeah.
hope because we haven't seen the cancelled night guy Rhaenyra sent to Harrenhal yet, have we?
No, we haven't. No, that's a good point because I'm trying to remember if he was in the episode like preview because I will watch those like recaps before the next episode. I'm trying to remember if he was in the recap or not because I totally expected him to show up in this episode.
I think it's going to be the next episode. If I think I
Probably.
know where we're going to go, it will be potential. But again, I've heard a lot of people say it won't go where I'm going to go because of budget reasons. They didn't put it in, but we don't know. I'm feeling it possibly will, but that's what I am kind of hoping. He's going to go to Harrenhal, talk to Damon. Damon's now going to realize I am still with Rhaenyra, even though he makes everybody believe I'm still doing it myself. I still want to be king, but he still, I think, cares for Rhaenyra. So he's obviously not going to be like, well, f you, I'm going to just gonna take it. He's obviously going to do. So I'm hoping that's going to happen, and then hoping he will then join back with Rhaenyra in the
Yeah.
next battle. Whether or not it'll be a battle against Vhagar is a thing. They were alluding to a dragon fight, which makes me believe Vhagar will go out to fight some dragons, I think, and end up getting attacked. What will happen? I don't know. I don't know. I do hope it's going to be an Aemond and a Daemon fight, but going from what I know from the books, I don't know.
Well, I'm excited to see whatever it is. I'm
Don't
also
know.
trying to avoid the internet about stuff because even prior to this episode, I was like, oh, I was just like watching YouTubers like responding to the episode. And some people just like drop Fire and Blood spoilers without warning. And
Yeah,
so
I've had
just,
that. I've had that. Somebody spoiled me about what's going to happen with Hugh and Olaf
I
today
think I saw that
on
spoiler too.
TikTok. It was on
Uh-huh.
TikTok. It was alluding to what happened in the book. So they're like, oh, by the way, in the book, I was like, fuck's sake, I'm not overly sad about it, but I
Yeah.
would be like, I'd like to get to that point and go, no, rather than be like, oh, yeah, I knew this because somebody spoiled it. Like, Game
Yeah.
of Thrones is known for this. Like, when Game of Thrones was airing, me and my best friend would go round to where she was, we kept a horse on the same yard. We'd go into the owner's house, watch Game of Thrones on a Monday lunchtime because if we waited any longer and we went and I used to just block the internet off my phone on a Monday. I went, I'm not even logging onto the internet. I'm
Yeah.
not doing it because I'd log on and I see a spoiler. And I'm like,
Hmm.
fucking hell. And like people just spoiler time. Give people time to watch it. Just
Right?
give people time. Especially when you consider like some people will stay up to 2 a.m. to watch it on a Monday. Not me. I
Hmm.
download it and watch it.
Yeah.
Because I can't because in America it airs at a reasonable time. I think 9 p.m. in most places, depending on your time
Yeah,
zone's a
it's
bit
9
different.
PM East Coast. I think it's like 7 PM for me. I'm not usually watching it at that time, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it is like
So
a reasonable
it's
like
a reasonable
evening.
time. Yeah, yeah. Europe, 2 a.m. in the morning. Who's staying up to 2 a.m.? No. And then it re airs again Monday night at 9 o'clock. So we get two airings. But it's still like,
They could just
yeah,
do it, like, earlier Sunday, so that way it would be, like, evening for Europe and, like, morning for the US, and then we'd both
I
be
know.
awake.
I know, but I think they just do it at the same time. I think half of it is because they're worried about some spoilers, but it happens anyway because Americans just publish the spoilers. Because I mean, some diehard fans will watch it at 2 a.m., but I just
I've
can't.
I've heard there's leaked clips for episode 8, and I'm just like, I'm avoiding any
Yeah,
House of the Dragon talk because I don't
I
wanna see
saw a
it.
little bit of a promo. Well, I saw people talk about the promos. I'm like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
that's not too bad. Like talking about the promo, that's fine for like the next episode.
Yeah,
And talking about it gives me an idea of what it could possibly be, which is
yeah.
why the fans are just divided on what it could be, especially people who've read the books. They're like, oh, it could be this, but they're thinking of budget issues. 8 episodes like this, it might not happen, but we don't know. So I think it's going to go where I think it's going to go. Interesting to see if I'm right or wrong, and I'm going to watch it. Annoyingly, I'm really busy Monday, but as soon as I get indoors on Monday, I'm going to watch it, and I'm just not going to go on the internet
Yeah. Good plan,
because it's
good plan.
it's because being the last episode, it's going to be a
Uh-huh.
bang. So I'm like, I don't want to know. I just want to sit and watch it, and then scream about it after.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, that's my
Well, I
idea.
think that is a good place to wrap this up. If you want to see the rest of our discussions on House of the Dragon, I have those in a playlist, which I will have linked, and I hope to see you in another video. Happy reading.